This is RF, and you're listening to Country Lunch on WOOL
I'm totally amazed.
91.5 FM from Bellows Falls. Anyways, we're back here talking about stone walls, and we were just talking about how interesting it is. These stones all are like nanotechnology to me, okay? Like replicators. They each hold a cell of information or a certain place and time and space, and you can if you study stone walls, you can see these rocks have something. Or these stones have something. I've seen this, although I'm not a stone wall expert. And what can you tell us about that? I mean,
Well, I know a lot about it. On my where I live, there's three stone walls, not just one. The one is the serpent wall that we talk about a lot because it's the most amazing. There are three of them. A lot of the stones inside the wall are just laying outside of the wall, placed in certain spots, are actually carved. They are several 100-pound stones that are carved into shape. And you just don't notice it because they don't look, you walk by it, they're all covered with algae and moss. And
I wasn't thinking about man-made carvings. I was thinking about these things came and they sort of grew in the earth, came to the surface, and each one of these was happened at a certain time and space that related to something cosmic.
brain cell of the earth.
Brain, yeah, like something like a tree that records every movement. You know what I mean? Of thunderstorms or a nuclear bomb.
That's a good way to think about the crystals because they're information holders naturally. We use them for that today. The images are holding information that are so. The images are powerful to a person who you have to put yourself into it to see the images. So you have to give something. So you give something of yourself to get the images out. And what that does is you get a temporal connection with the artist, whoever did this. And
The creator.
they're actually affecting your life from thousands of years away. They're touching you with these most temporal images that still affect you at your deepest levels. That's what it is. That's the technology. And quartz crystal is a magical stone. They use the best of the best pieces, and when you put images in them, it just enhances that power. And there's a quartz crystal. There's usually a core to the crystal that goes right through the stone from bottom to top, and they'd put little windows at the bottom and the top of the stone, like the energy would flow up and down through these things. Whether they fit in your hand, in your palm, and you could put them under your pillow at night, or you just place them around your house or your property, they enhance your life because they do.
The crystals create themselves like that, or man created the crystals like that. Just
The crystals
with the
were
windows.
created in the earth, and then what these people would do would look at the stone and see what was in it, and they'd pull
They
out of that.
recognized they recognized that the stone was special and that it had special qualities. And we can see that where they created the landforms there and the areas for their growing. Whereas in the rest of the Americas, when they talk about the midden, this engineered soil that we've gone over in these discussions before, up in the northeastern area, they created the midden with stone, whereas the rest of the Americas, they created the midden with the pottery that they made.
Mhm.
So this is what lends me to believe that this area of the world, this area of the Americas, was an origination point. This is where it started, and then it diffused out to the rest of the Americas. Their story of the movements of the Native American tribes in the Americas doesn't even make sense to them. If you study that, if you study the anthropology of the Native American tribes, you'll see that the specialists in these areas can't make sense out of the way that these people moved around the country. So, and as we know, the Native Americans came far after the people who built the stone walls and the chambers and the effigies and the cairns, because they never claimed any responsibility for doing those things. So it must have been an awfully long time ago that these things happened. But
And it was an
it's clear to
incredible
me, and it's
level of
clear to
technology
Jimmy.
they got themselves to back then. I mean, if you can do this into a stone, uh, there's no technology I can think about to replicate that. And they did it back then. And we're talking, I don't know, I guess right after the deluge, pre-deluge, long time
Or
ago.
maybe, right, it's somewhere around that area. So you're wondering, what these people thought of the stones. Well, after that cataclysm or after that catastrophe or whatever had happened, that moved the stone all around and threw it in all different places and whatnot, they recognized this. They recognized the power of the heavens, the power of earth. They were closely and intimately engaged with nature. So they were a lot closer to it than we are today, and that's one of the reasons that it's almost a hindrance for us to try to figure out or get into the minds of these people, because our society is so far removed from what they were experiencing in those times. And we know from the histories there were many cataclysms and catastrophes up even until the excuse me, the 1200s, where there was a number of, recorded by mainstream academics, a number of catastrophes up and down the east coast of the North American continent. So these people lived through all of these experiences. We're living through one right now, right, with the coronavirus and all that kind of stuff. Well, these people lived over the thousands of years that they occupied these lands. They lived through many catastrophes. And I think that some of the constructions of the walls, the chambers, and everything else has some relationship to these experiences that they had. And they wanted to tell us about it. They want us to tell us about their culture. They want us to tell us about these experiences. And that's what you can find in the stone walls. Those messages are there, but how can we decipher them? Well, it's going to take us a while to decipher them, because we really have to get into the minds of these people, and that's not easy for us. We have to remove ourselves from our modern contemporary society to get into the mindset of these people. And Jimmy and I and a few other people have attempted to do those sort of things, but so much more research has to be done into this, because there's much more than just pictures in the walls. There's stories, there's information, there's essential information about that culture that's built right into the stone walls. And places like where Jimmy lives are very, very special places, because we know, because we've been everywhere and we've seen a lot of the stones walls in the Northeast. And not all of them are created to convey these messages and these stories. Some of them are just strictly for utilitarian use, or, part of leading up to the story or whatever it is. But we know from walking along the walls that they often don't have anything particular in them until you get to certain areas. And then when you get to those certain areas, you have what I call, like Jimmy was saying, there's all these arches and circles and triangles and crosses and other symmetrical things built into the wall.
Geometry, yeah.
Some of them are asymmetrical, but those stories are in those stone walls, and they reflect this culture. They reflect the history of these cultures. And what Jimmy and I and a few other researchers have been attempting to do is to try to decipher some of these things. And you really have to use your imagination, just like these people did. They had very, very deep deep sort of understanding of nature, and it reflected in their work. And we are going to have a tough time figuring that out because we're so removed from that. We literally have to get back into it through spending time among the stone walls, and that's Jimmy and I often say, you really have to spend time among the stone walls to really get the feeling, and
There's so much to discover.
to try to understand more of it.
There's so much there, and the baseline of these people was whoever built the walls. Out of the people that were there, they knew geometry very well, because if you take the wall and you photograph it, and you carefully study where the stones are placed and how they're placed in the walls, you'll start seeing geometry in the walls, and not just spirals, but you see things that shouldn't be there in a stone wall. The way they were built, that's why they don't fall down. They're built so well, and I say, it looks like a bridge builder built that. And
you know where Jimmy, where you see evidence for this geometry and their understanding of geometry and the sacred geometry. You know where you really see it? You really see it later on with the Adena and the Hopewell, let's say, because
Sure.
of their earthwork.
Yes.
And I've shown on my channel these perfect geometric figures that they made in earthworks, this sacred geometry, perfect circles, perfect triangles, overlapping circles, overlapping triangles, these geometric, but they're absolutely 100% perfect
And they're giant.
in their
They're very
earthwork
large.
form. So there's your evidence right there, if you want to consider it from looking at the Adena
And they
the
use stone
Hopewell.
in the Northeast because there was so much stone material here.
Right, and you have mountains, you have bedrock. There's not a
Right.
lot of earth to work with,
Right.
although they did on small scales.
But it was
I
the
give
same
evidence.
idea. The same people had the geometry on their mind. And think about it. These people had geometry skills. They weren't hunter gatherers. That's for sure. They were thinking geometry. They were building their walls with geometry built into it. And I think to leave a message. First of all, they knew what they were doing, and to put that much work and skill and thought into something, you had to be leaving it for perpetuity. And generations would have come there and learned things. Like Dave said, that this part of the wall would be for one thing, this part would be another. That's the way it seems, but the whole site, or these sites that have these type of walls, are usually high up on ridges where you can see the heavens and the stars and the horizon. They're sacred places. They're near water sources. You go out to the mid part of the country and there's no rock. They build them out of earth. The same type of thing. The geometry, the geometrical shapes. And the wall is the exact same thing. It's a perfectly straight wall with all the geometry built into it. So it's the same people, just different areas and different cultures,
You can find more information about stone walls by going to YouTube and searching for Paleo Mountain Man or Stonewall Research Budcat 7.